your favorite story about Uncle Dave that shows the kind of man he was? Somebody that didn't really know him. How would you?
Well, the one, I'll tell you this one. You could use it if you wanted to. It's true facts. We was coming from New York, and Uncle Dave had a upper berth, so he got up early of the morning, and he'd always get up early. Then he would eat his breakfast, and he'd go back to bed and sleep an hour or two. But early one morning, about 5 o'clock, we was come from New York, and Uncle Dave had this upper berth, and he stuck his head out, and this old gentleman coming down the aisle had a robe on, sophisticated man, I'd say. And Uncle Dave says, "Have you seen the porter?" Well, the old man couldn't hear good, and he thought Uncle Dave said, "Are you the porter?" And he says, "No, I'm not the porter." And Uncle Dave, they was quiet. Uncle Dave said, "I said, had you seen the porter?" And the old man says, "Oh, I beg your pardon, I beg your pardon." And Uncle Dave says, "Hell yes, you ain't got no sense no way. If you see that porter up there, tell him, come on here, I got to get on here and go to the bathroom." And everybody was sticking their heads out to see what was going on.
Uncle Dave was a good singer, wasn't he? He
Oh,
had a
yeah,
good,
yeah.
strong voice.
And his voice never did break. It's just good on up to the end.
He had a good sense of pitch, too.
Yes, yes it is. But one time he carried 3 banjos because he had them tuned. Uncle Dave didn't know nothing about keys and nothing. And now they use a capo on them. But he didn't know nothing about a capo and wouldn't have used it anyway. It was a long time we couldn't get him to use a mic. He said, "Set that thing over out of my way." But finally he got educated to the mic.
So you carried 3 banjos with
Yeah,
you?
yeah. And we knew what kind was coming next. He'd say, "Kirk, get that little yellow banjo." And that's one he'd do certain numbers on.
Did he play any other instrument besides the
No,
banjo? Or?
no. He could strike a tune on a fiddle, play something slow or something, Didn't amount to much.
Do you think that he learned many of his songs from black people?
I think he did. His father owned, I think at the end of the war probably there was a young black boy or two that they still had, I used to hear him talk about Arch Macon. I believe this is the fellow's name. And everything he ever learned, he never did forget it. Same way it was about the jokes. We played the Princess Theater, and this man used a joke out there. Well, then we was on before him the next act, and Uncle Dave used it.
So he picked it up between acts then?
Yeah, he did.
Were you ever with him when he learned any of his songs? How did he go about learning a song?
Oh, he'd just copy him, and if he'd hear one, he'd say, "Give me the words to that." And most anybody'd write it off for him,
When you traveled with Uncle Dave, were you trying to make a living out of music full time then?
Well, at that day and time, I needed it as bad as I do now. We, of course, I had a family, and had bills to pay. Well, farming was a pretty slow way getting it, and we never had made any money till we started on the road. We worked in eastern Kentucky and West Virginia. That's after the Depression was coming out from under the Depression, and they got the unions organized up there, and there's just one place that they wouldn't let us play, and said we had a little trouble with the manager that runs the store. He's fighting the union, and we're not going to let you play. They said if when we get this thing settled, if you come back, we'll promise you a full house. And we did. We went back. I said, well, if it's like that, I don't want to play. Because I didn't want to get no arguments out of the way home,
Right. What did Uncle Dave think of unions and things like that?
Well, he didn't have much comment on it. He just didn't talk about things like that.
Did Uncle Dave ever play for any politicians when they were campaigning?
Yeah, we worked on one occasion, that's when Pat Sutton was running for Congress, and I guess we had the biggest crowds of any politician. Pat Sutton came to me and wanted me to work. I said, yeah, I'll work for you. And he said, well, who else would you say would be a good drawing card? And I said, do you want the best and want to pay? And he said, yeah, if I get the best, I'm willing to pay the best. I said, okay. Uncle Dave Macon. I said, I'd rather have Miss Bonham and Bailey's Big Elephant to draw a crowd. So we made a trade with Uncle Dave, and we worked for Pat Sutton 90 days. And he was always ready to go. You never did have to wait on him 1 minute. In fact, he wanted to go before time.
Did Uncle Dave, though, when he worked for Mr. Sutton, he looked on that just as another job?
Another job, that's right, yeah.
Did you ever make up any songs about when you went out to campaign for him? Did you have any special songs?
No, he never did make any songs. I'll tell you one thing. You're talking about, things is funny. It was funny to me. We played at a place called Summertown. You know where Summertown is? Okay. We played it, and there was about a dozen ministers there and all their congregations to hear the speech, and hear Uncle Dave and me play. And anyway, he wasn't going over. He done his best jokes and his best songs, and he just wasn't going over. Well, he couldn't figure it out. We had an intermission, and we was back there in a little room and talking. And Uncle Dave called me Kirky Boy. He said, Kirky Boy, I've done my best songs and my best jokes, and I'm not going over, and I don't know what the reason is. He says, when I go back out there, I've got one more song I'm going to do, and I wrote it myself. It's called No Time for God, and if I don't like that, I got 'em going home. But after the speaking was over, the man came up and Uncle Dave said, now I want you to tell me what is wrong tonight. They just wasn't receiving me out there. And the fellow says, I'll tell you exactly. There was about a dozen preachers here in that congregation, and these people just wouldn't loosen up. And that was it. We found out that was it.
So, but he did do the song, No Time for
Oh,
God.
he done the song, and it was a great song.
I never heard that song.
Well, I don't know it, but Doris would have that song now. His son, Doris.
It sounded like a good song.
It is a good song, got fine words to it, and he wrote it,
Did he write that song, Chewing Gum, that he used to do?
I don't think he did. Don't think he did.
Where do you think he got it?
Oh, he just picked it up and pieced it together. He could have written it.
When you say he pieced it together, what do you mean?
Well, Uncle Dave didn't, he had lots of songs he'd use the same words, maybe a verse. And just like this Bound to Go, he'd pick up some little verse and he'd say, well, that'll work in there. So that's what he did.
So he'd just string little pieces of songs together then. I see. Kind of like making a quilt.
That's right.
I was going to ask you, did you ever play on any medicine shows with Uncle Dave?
Yeah, I played on, not with the medicine show, no, never did. But I worked medicine shows. I worked a lot of them. I was with Dr. Harris, worked down south with him. That is, but I guess 19 and 22 probably. And that's the first money that I'd made. I was getting $5 a day in all expenses. I thought that was real money. It was then.
Did he have a wagon that he would pull up into the town?
No, he'd rent auditoriums. He'd go into a town, you might say like Franklin, Tennessee here. He'd go into this town, he'd rent the auditorium, and we'd do little bits, we'd call them, little doctor shop plays, they called them then. And we'd stay there a week.
What were those little bits like?
Or just like sawing the man's leg off, I did remember all of them. I don't remember any of them now. But anyway, you'd have the sheet over the man. You was going to saw his leg off, and while he's looking around to get his saws and axes and one thing and another, the man would change ends. And it was a funny show.
It sounds like it. When you were with Uncle Dave in the 20s, starting out, there weren't many people trying to make a living with music then, were there?
You know, you didn't have any competition. Uncle Dave was about the only one. And he had Fiddle and Sid with him when they first saw him, you know. But he and Uncle Dave didn't get along very well.
You told me a story one time about Uncle Dave and a bib.
Oh, yeah.
Did you tell us that story?
Yes, he had this bib, you know, to take care of his shirt. He'd go in a restaurant, and first thing he'd do, he'd like to get the attention of the people so they'd watch him, you know. He'd take this bib out and put it on, and he'd sit there and smooth it down, you know. And we was in a little town in Mississippi. It seemed like to me it was something 7 points or something like that. But anyway, Uncle Dave said, I believe I'll go in and get me a piece of pie. I said, Uncle Dave, I don't want any. I'll just sit in the car till you get your pie. Well, I could see him through the window, and he went in in the restaurant. He was sitting there, and he put his bib on. The little waitress came around, and Uncle Dave said, little lady, bring me a piece of coconut pie. She said, I'm sorry, sir, we just don't have any pie. And that made him mad. Well, he come on back out to the car and still had his bib on. And I said, Uncle Dave, ain't you going to take your bib on? He said, hell no, I'm going to wear it all day. He's mad.
We heard a story that Uncle Dave used to travel around with a ham or something like that.
Oh,
Can you tell us
yeah.
that?
Now, I wasn't on that trip, but it did happen. He had this thick part of the ham cut out, and that was a trip to Oklahoma. And Robert Lund was with him. So Uncle Dave, they had a waiter. A man came around, and Uncle Dave said, now, good boy, take this here piece of ham and just get it real hot. Don't cook it. If you do, you'll ruin it. And he brought it back to him. It looked like a shoe sole, he said. And Uncle Dave said, oh, you've ruined it. Only put a lot more stuff with it. You've ruined it. And take it back in and throw it out the back door. It won't be no counting. The damn gravy won't either. And the box that you had this ham in, that was, they went out to make the picture with Roy Acuff. And so Uncle Dave says, good boy, take this here box and put it up on the bus. I'm going to take it back home and make good hen's nest.
What kind of things made him mad?
Made him mad. What had fret him more than anything else, why, when he went to somebody's house, he wanted to sleep, you know, or take his nap. So we would, up at a little place up in East Tennessee, I believe they call it Oolywall. Well, we played the school there, and he had a first cousin lady. Of course, she wanted to talk with him, you know. And he was wanting to go to bed, and he was mad. And so he told me, she stepped in the kitchen for something. Uncle Dave says, if you don't fix that bed, I'm going somewhere and get me a room.
So he liked to have his nap?
Oh, he had to have it.
Oh. If you had to explain to somebody who didn't know Uncle Dave, and had never heard of him before, sum it up or explain why he was so popular, how would you do it?
Well, my way of looking at it,
Could you wait a second? Wait for this part up. So we get here.
the reason he was so popular, he was so good. And he could just fit in the occasion no matter what it was. He had his part and had it ready. He could either make the audience laugh or make them cry. So that's one thing. And, if you ever heard him, you wanted to hear him again, you know, knowing what he's going to do or what he's going to say. But that's the way it is with a lot of people. Now, Uncle Dave, he didn't care for other professionals, like Fiddlin' John Carson. They was on the same show, and they liked to vote.
They did. Tell us
Yeah.
about that.
Well, they told me that each one was jealous of the other because he's going over with the audience. And Uncle Dave had his, he knew his part, you know, and Uncle Dave knew, I didn't understand a lot about Uncle Dave, why he dress like he did, you know. It's just like they was having a thing in Atlanta. And Theron Hale, did you ever hear of him and his two daughters? He was a man, he just looked like he just stepped out of a bandbox all the time. Everything was in place. Well, he told Uncle Dave, says, Uncle Dave, your pants needs a press job. The knees are baggy. He says, that's all right, you watch me bag that audience tonight. And he did. Well, if he had a spruced up, it would have ruined his act. And that's the reason for that.
Okay, so he wouldn't really dress up to the hilt then.
No.
Tell us how he dressed. What kind of clothes?
Well, he generally wore dark clothes, and he'd put that suit on, and he'd just wear that suit. I never did see him have a suit pressed in all the time that I worked with him. He didn't want, he would have ruined his image if he had, you know. Well, I didn't understand it then.
Excuse me, let me change my camera.
Should use a lot.
Would you get a drink of water?
Did you get one?
So would you like to get one?
No.
Well, it's cooling off a little bit. I don't know about you, I'm getting a little breeze over here.
I can stand the heat, but I can't stand the cold.
Mm-hmm. What direction is that over there now?
That'd be east.
That's east, huh? Okay. I don't know what we were talking about.
Well, getting back to Uncle Dave. The characteristics of Uncle Dave. Uncle Dave, they accused him of being tight with his money and things, but he wasn't. He wouldn't give anybody on the street anything, you know. But if a church or something like that, a burnout, why, he was right there. I know we was playing for this politician up a little place called Rally Hill, and they was coming up a cloud. Well, it struck a house and burned it down, just burned it down in a few minutes. And Uncle Dave said, while it's fresh on our mind, let's take up a donation for this good man that's lost his home. And he made up about $82 in just a few minutes, you know.
When was it that you were playing for this politician? Remember what year that would have been? Was it before the war, for instance?
No. It probably it's been 18 years.
18 years? So
Mhm.
that would have been, what, after World War II then?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
We used to hear that Uncle Dave used to like his toddy a lot. You know, is that true?
Oh, he did, but it wasn't like people thought it was. They'd hear him on the Grand Ole Opry, you know, he'd be hollering and hooping and stomping his feet and carrying on playing. They'd say, well, the old man's loaded again tonight. But that wasn't true.
He was just in high spirits then?
That's all. He was a make-believe, you know. A lot of people, they'd get a kick out of it. They'd say, well, the old man's high tonight. But that wasn't it. I never saw him. I knew he'd take a drink, and he didn't care who else knew it. He didn't deny it, but he never got too much that he couldn't put on his show, you know. Never missed a show or nothing like that.
I think that's something that a lot of people who don't know much about music think, that but you know, if you get good and drunk, you can make better music, and it's just the opposite, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
You can't play at all.
No, that's
When Uncle Dave did a show, how many numbers would he perform? Would you say? Let's say we're talking about